It's Wednesday, the 30th of March, 2023. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 big stories in 5 minutes. Let's jump straight in. Pressure is on the Reserve Bank to not lift interest rates when its board meets next week after inflation figures came in lower than expected.
Inflation last month came in at 6.8% for the 12 months to the end of February, down from 7.4% a month earlier. The Bureau of Statistics figures pretty much confirms that inflation peaked late last year. The question now is how fast will it come back to the Reserve Bank's 2 to 3% target range? Wages growth is running at more than 3% per annum. Not a bad thing, but certainly it will feed into inflation. Now, AMP has something they call the indicator or the pipeline of inflation. It includes things like commodity prices, shipping rates, pricing surveys, etc. They reckon that there's a significant slowing in inflation ahead. Rates have been hiked to cut off inflation, and it looks like it's working.
Will yesterday's numbers, Sean, be enough to convince the Reserve Bank board to not lift rates next week?
That's the big question. Inflation is one of 4 key variables the central bank has nominated as being critical to its decision-making. Yesterday's data suggests it could hold. Business and consumer sentiment and conditions surveys are mixed. The labour market is unequivocally strong. The fourth one is retail sales, and there has been a loss of momentum in that area. So it's very, very possible that the Reserve Bank will pause next week. In fact, there's a bunch of market economists who now think that's true. Remember, the official cash rate has gone from 0.1% to 3.6%. Basically, that means you're paying on your home loan was 2 point something. We're now kind of high sixes or so. I reckon most of us would be delighted if they stopped lifting interest rates, Michael.
Yep, I would certainly be one of them, Sean. Story number 2, how about this? Employers must ask workers if they want to work public holidays and can't just automatically roster them on, according to a landmark court ruling that will apply to all workplaces, regardless of what's in contracts or in agreements.
The full federal court judgment comes just days before the Easter holidays. It held that BHP's internal labour hire outfit breached the Fair Work Act by requiring miners to work on Christmas and Boxing Day, according to a report in the Financial Review. The ruling is a major win for unions and could expose other employers to civil penalties. Think retail, hospitality, health and emergency services, where they roster people automatically on public holidays. Basically, the ruling said that the National Employment Standards overrides contracts, awards, enterprise agreements, and those standards mandate that employers must make reasonable requests to work public holidays, i.e. they have to ask employers. Big decision yesterday.
Yeah, big change. Story number 3, Sean, is kind of linked to story number 1. The federal government is effectively backing an inflation-matching wage rise for the nation's 180,000 lowest paid workers.
And based on yesterday's numbers, that's a whopping 6.8% wage rise. Yesterday, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the government's annual submission to the minimum wage review by the Fair Work Commission, which is due tomorrow, will be consistent with the values from last year. Now, you might remember the brouhaha during the election campaign when Albanese was asked if he'd support a wage increase in line with inflation. He said yes. Eventually, 180,000 lowest paid workers got a catch-up 5.2% increase. I think low-paid workers should get a decent bump. Problem is, it can flow through to the rest of the economy, triggering the dreaded wage price spiral. Higher wages means people push up prices even more.
Sean, story number 4, property giant Meriton has suffered a data breach. It happened back in January, and the stolen data included information such as bank details and birth certificates and employee-related details on staff and guests.
That's right. Meriton is owned by billionaire Harry Triguboff, Australia's 6th richest person. It develops and sells apartments, but it also operates serviced apartment accommodation. Data on about 2,000 people, or almost 2,000 people, has been stolen. It joins a growing list of companies that have been breached, including Latitude Financial, Medibank, Optus, and plenty of others. In fact, earlier this week, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission Chair Gina Cass-Gottlieb said that while $569 million was reported in stolen scams in 2022, that only represented about 13% of the actual figure.
All right, last story. Story number 5, Sean. It hardly fits into the business basket, but it's such a good story about people with too much money. And besides, you've been talking about it to me now for pretty much a week. And so I think it is due a mention. Actress Gwyneth Paltrow is being sued by a skier over a collision they had at Deer Valley Resort in Utah while skiing back in 2016.
The trial has gone on for 6 days. It's due to wrap up this morning, Australian time. It will have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to run. Retired optometrist Terry Sanderson is suing Paltrow for at least $300,000 in damages for allegedly running into him while skiing. Paltrow has countersued for $1 and attorney fees, of course, claiming Sanderson ran into her. Now, the critical point is who was skiing uphill and who was downhill when the collision occurred. The unwritten code of skiing is if you're uphill, you do everything you can to avoid the person downhill. But to sue someone over it, Michael, the world has gone mad.
It certainly has. There we go, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 30th of March, 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. If 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts, and that may be on the Amazon Echo smart speaker range, which comes with Alexa built in. Simply say, Alexa, play the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed podcast to catch the latest episode. Grab yours now at amazon.com.au. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.